Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about startups. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, I just joined a startup, but there is no version control and there are no code reviews. Should I quit this job? Yes. Well, maybe not immediately, but yes, within a fairly short, I would say, uh, make a way off here. So I'm going to be super opinionated on this one, and I'm just going to project my personal value system, and then I'm going to try to be objective as well in with the other stuff. Uh, I argue that regardless of where you work, depending on where you are in your personal development, there is something to learn. An example would be if an adult goes to middle school. Well, depending on the subject, it might, or if, like fifth grade. There was this show, like Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader or something like that, where we make fun of adults because the fifth graders know stuff that they don't. Uh, and this is very true in some sense, because just because you're an adult, that doesn't necessarily mean that you know all the things that a fifth grader is learning at that moment. And so if you went back to fifth grade, it might not be the most stimulating thing for you, but there might be things that you have to learn. But if, let's say, you went all the way back to kindergarten, uh, that's probably you probably have mastered all there is to know within kindergarten potentially. And it's the same thing here. If you are a master programmer and you go to a job, you might find that, hey, there's actually nothing here that is worth learning. And then you should quit. I mean, that depends on you, of course. If they pay you more money than anywhere else, and that's the thing that you care about, stay. Me personally, I believe in personal development. I believe that that is the most efficient way for you to structure your long-term career. So for someone like myself, I would not stay in such a company because there's nothing here that will evolve me, and unless they're paying me insanely well, why would I be there? It's actually damaging my career, or it's like it would be the same thing as if a very fit person who does a lot of jogging has a friend who is very obese. Well, you can start jogging with them, but then you're actually going to lose a bit of your fitness as well. So you have to decide: do you want to jog with your friend at a slower pace, and the result being you get less fit while they get fitter, of course, or do you want to run with people who are at about the same level that you are, or maybe even strong, or maybe even fitter than you? It's the same sort of thing. And you need to ask yourself about this startup. Is that the case? Or just because they're not using version control and code reviews, I mean, these are big red flags that they are working in a way that is fairly different from the rest of the industry. It is. Well, I'm not saying necessarily that code reviews is a must, I mean, but at least the version control. Like it's standard practice in the entire industry. It's I mean, it's more standard than doing testing or like automated testing. So not doing that is I'm not going to say more than that. But even so, there might be things that are actually useful for you to learn here. And so if you go in with the mindset that I'm going to be here and I'm going to learn the things that are valuable to me, and then I'm going to move on when I no longer can find any value from this thing. That might be that's what I would like to do, or that's what I suggest that you do, because odds are that you might actually learn something that is valuable to you, and then you can take the next job because you're still gaining experience. But what I like about what this question is that this indicates something that is very important. Some developers who go into a company, they treat the practices of that company as the absolute truth. I mean, the reverse isn't good either. Like, you shouldn't just because someone's doing something that is a little bit different from what, say, I don't know, Google does. That doesn't mean that Google is right and this company is wrong, because that is the other extreme. It's actually very common to see that in younger developers, that they question everything every company does because it's not the thing that they saw on a tech talk, which is not correct either. But for this specific scenario, you have realized that yes, this company is doing something that is for many people considered an anti-pattern. Now that means that you are actually mitigated. You have mitigated the risk of you getting too complacent and getting into a position where you try to get another job and you realize that, oh shit, people are doing all of these other things, and I didn't know that, and now I don't have any relevancy, because you can still use version control. You can use a version control system or so forth, and and update yourself. And so that's not going to necessarily hurt you. Just because that company doesn't use it doesn't mean that you can still learn it, and you can still go to the next job where I can almost guarantee you that they're going to use it. So that's why I think that you're here, like that's where you should keep your thought process, and then reflect if there are things here that are valuable for you to learn, and then move on when that is no longer the case. And I would say that that should be the case regardless. I think it's more true when you're dealing with a company that is this that has examples of so well, I'm gonna call them anti-patterns, because they are anti-patterns, like serious anti-patterns. It should be enough of a tell, and especially if it's a startup. I'm guessing it's a very small startup. Odds are that you're gonna outgrow that job very quickly if you're progressing your career in a healthy fashion. So what I want you to take away from this is that yes, if you find yourself in a company where they work in a very anti-pattern way, where they have, as I like to say, a very niched way of doing work that is not in line with most of what the industry is doing. That doesn't mean that every idea that this company has is bad. That's what you have to understand. There are anti-patterns, and then there are people who are doing things a different way. And you have to, this is a little bit hard in the beginning to understand the differences, because just because you're not using the latest and the greatest tools. An example would be, someone asked me the other day, "Oh, Freddie, we're using VMs instead of Kubernetes. Should I quit?" And I go, "No, why? Just because you're not using Kubernetes, that doesn't mean that you have a bad company. It's just that you believe that Kubernetes is the only way of doing things." And that's where the experience comes in, where you realize that, hey, there's actually a lot of companies who are just using VMs instead of Kubernetes, and you're in the same position. If you find that there are a few things that are quirky, there might still be a lot of valuable things that you can learn in that company. And so try to learn those lessons, and then start looking for another position where you can learn even more. If you have that mindset, it's actually fairly easy for you to keep yourself up to date and relevant. The one thing you don't want is to get into a company where you're actually not learning what is considered to be standard practice or common practice among most of the IT industry. Because if that is the case, then you might very well face a risk with trying to get a new job, where people just go, "You don't know any of the stuff that most of us are working with. Well, sorry, we can't hire you." And that is something that you need to be aware of when you start working in any company. Have a great day.